So Tony Ashton, hi, nice to meet you all. I have a pretty long background in analytics. I started in the days before there was a thing called a pivot table. Who spends time in Excel still today? Okay, many people are raising their hands and many are afraid to raise their hand. It's a cool tool, but it's not how you scale work across an enterprise. I think that's kind of the reality. Because if there's something wrong in cell AAA512, and that formula is going to screw up your day. So we've got to have something scale. We'll talk a bit about that. But my world started there. So I spent 15 plus years as a HR guy across a bunch of federal government departments in Canberra. But then found myself in this little company in Brisbane called Infohrm, or Info-HRM, which was basically the first company that provided people analytics solutions across the globe, and got bought by a little company called SuccessFactors. Hi, all our SuccessFactors colleagues out there, who then got acquired by another little company called SAP. So I went from working in a 150-person company to working in a 100,000-person company, and it wasn't fun anymore. So now I'm in a 130-person company, and it's fun. So we'll talk a bit about that in a moment. So what does One Model do? So we provide people analytics platform, effectively. So what that is a way of doing everything that you need to do without having to get massive teams and lots of different technologies and stitch them together. So it's a solution kind of racked up in a bow. And we'll talk a bit about what that means. But the point of it is better, faster decisions deployed to the people who are making those decisions. So people leaders every day are making micro decisions around who do I give a pay rise to, who do I hire, all the things that you do to manage a team, who's had the right amount of training, all that sort of stuff. So the idea is that, people just had that at their fingertips. Yeah, my most famous kind of, or favorite analogy around the domain of people analytics, though, is if you throw a rock into the internet, you'll find 100,000 articles on the value of data-driven decision-making. Yet, who has actually fully deployed that concept in their company? Hands up if you are just on it. Everyone is using data and not driving by gut. Okay, I was expecting one hand, but we have none. Okay, there's one there. You're lying. And that's fine. We're all friends here. So yeah, but I mean, it's obvious, right? I won't go through all the whys, but anyone who wants the slides after can reach out. Yeah, like this makes a big difference to how you run an organization. And in a HR space, it's about the ethical treatment of decisions. It's about merits-based decisions, and it's about people's lives. So this stuff really matters. Okay, so it's also, though, not really that mysterious. There has been a lot of research done in the world of people analytics back to the 50s, when it was called, dare I say, like manpower planning and stuff like that, which is obviously not okay, but the concept's been around for a long time. So, yeah, why is it hard? Usually for a bunch of these reasons. So we're getting into the topic of AI, but if you want to start using AI and you've got a bunch of really badly managed systems underneath, then you're going to have a really badly managed AI on top of it. So we'll talk a bit about more what that means in a moment. But if your data's in multiple places, it's hard to bring it together. If your data is not very clean and very accurate and repeatable, then your executive team is going to nail you and you're going to have a bad day. Analytics tools are usually very complicated and hard to use. And so the average person walking around doesn't want to be an analyst. They just want to get answers to make their decisions that they need. The data privacy security requirements around people data is much higher than lots of other domains in a company. And then the kind of the promise of AI and machine learning is yet probably completely unrealized in the HR space. So who has none of these problems? Okay, we've got one who's upon it. Okay, so in part when I talk about the AI, the transition to the AI piece here, in a lot of ways, your AI readiness is actually not really a technology problem. It's how do you get buy-in and trust and engagement in the organization to trust the data that you're using to do those decisions. And I know if everyone's had this experience, I certainly have, where you roll into an executive team meeting and you've got your dashboards and your percentage and stuff, and someone says that number's wrong. And even if it's out by 0.5%, and in your 10,000 person company, that really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It does matter. People kind of, basically shoot the messenger. They're going to attack the data so they don't have to deal with the challenges that the data's raising. So getting accurate data really, really does matter. And how do you do that? And you've got to deal with all these things. How do you trace from whatever you're presenting back to the source that data lineage? How do you prove the data quality and accuracy? How do you provide good access to people? How do you get rid of bias in the data if you're using machine learning or statistics? And how do you wrap security around it? So we'll talk a bit about those in a second. This guy's office is on fire. I guess he's in charge of some important stuff, and he just YOLO'd it to ChatGPT, and now it's not good. AI has lots of limitations that everyone's probably well aware of. I don't know if everyone can read this at the back. I'll read it out. This is an example that one of our AI team genuinely got from the GPT, which was, hey, we should use fax machines. And the AI said, that's a great idea. You're so smart. So the problem of AI, complementing us, all that sort of, behavior is kind of really undermining. And people forget that AI is a predict the next letter type of tool, recognize the patterns type of tool, not a reasoning tool. So even though there's lots of research around the reasoning models in AI, it's not using reason as we would understand it to be. So you've got to be careful about that. It never wants to say it doesn't know the answer. It will always try and give you an answer, and that is very dangerous. And it's not fundamentally built for this domain. So that's something to think about as well. The key when you're deploying AI is it needs to be repeatable, auditable, explainably managed, and responsibly managed before and after. So if you're running some analysis and then you apply AI to it, you should be able to do that 100 times and you should be able to get the same answer every time. Normally when you ask AI to do something for you, you know you're going to get very different answers all the time, or variations on a theme. If you want to know how many people you've got in your company, that number needs to be the same number every single time, right? It can't be out at all. Some red flags and green flags that I think you want to look for when you're looking at technology around this. Anything that is vague and is not explainable, you should immediately question. So you'll be able to know, okay, how was that trained? What was the model that was used? And what is the performance score of the model that was used? So you should be able to answer those questions or any data you're looking at. And if you can't, that's an immediate red flag because there's a black box there that is not auditable and not traceable. And if everything is explainable and is employee focused and focused on employee outcomes, then you're going to be in a better place. One that's really important in here is also training and retraining and being able to show that you've gone through a performance analysis process. So that repeatability, you should be able to have like a battery of tests that show, okay, we asked the AI these 100 questions and every time it came out with basically the same answer. And if you make changes to the algorithm, ask the same questions again. So you've got to be able to have a set of criteria that you're evaluating and testing for yourself. So in the One Model platform, we've got data across lots of different domains. This is just an example set, but there's no real limit to this. What's important here is that, though, we give you a quick start, a get-going quick guide. So for all these different domains, there is content ready to go out of the box. And this helps with the whole accelerating time to get to the AI side of things. So when you want to get into the fun stuff, you've got to do the right groundwork. So here, how many people do we have and where are they working across the business? How do we even understand headcount? What is that number? Does it include contingent employees or not? All that sort of stuff. So in these standard storyboard content, we break out all the detailed information to get to those insights. If I look at something like turnover, we've got a slightly different calculation here. You can see we've got a formula if I look at one of these metrics and I can click on it, I can see the details of the formula. So everywhere along the value chain, you can say, tell me more. Okay, this is the definition. This is the number of people that left during the period as a percentage of the average number of people that we had. Pretty basic, but I can click and see, okay, who were those people? So this is again on that trust and traceability side of things. During an executive meeting, they say, I don't believe the number. Okay, let's dig in. Let's solve it right now. Let's not come back in 2 weeks because everyone's kind of not up for that. So being able to solve and drill into those things in real time is really important. In this example, when we're at that detailed level, go back. Here we can also jump back into the source. We could jump back into SuccessFactors or Workday or Greenhouse or Oracle or whatever it might be. And again, that just ties everything together. Okay, so this has been fun. Let's get into more of a kind of the design side of things. So while this is kind of ready to go, I might want to make it my own. So we've got this really easy to use design space where I can completely change everything in the experience. And what's great about this is you don't need to be a kind of an analytics expert to do this. Anyone can do this. And we're trying to empower the HR team and broader teams in the organization to build their own content, to share it around the place. And so I could share this, and this is where the security comes in. I can share with every HR business partner, every people leader, and then they get their own personal version of that. So when you share it around, it's filtered on the fly for the person that logs in based on where they are in the company and their data access role and everything else. Okay, let's talk about some of the AI stuff. Watching time. Okay, so here are some pre-built prompts for our AI. These are configurable by the customer to suit their context and what they think people will need to be able to know to learn to use the app before they start writing their own prompts. So in this example, we've got a bit of a guided experience. So here I'm asking about recruiting. I'm working through it. I want to look at what the funnel looks like. So in this example, it's creating a really lovely curated experience for me. So here I can see, okay, how many people are rolling through the different stages? What's the conversion rate between stage? How much time spent in each stage? Everything I need to know about the funnel in one vision. But if I want to know more, actually, there was also an AI interpretation of what's going on there. If I want to know more, I can click and go into the whole storyboard. So here I've got now a full storyboard that's all about that topic. Okay, back to the AI. So I might want to ask a more tailored question. So I might actually want to ask something very specific. Show me, not show me, external. Okay, typing and talking is bad. Wait. Show my external hires for the last 12 months. So I can basically ask anything I want of the AI, but what's happening here is I get a novel visualization that was just created. This didn't exist before I just asked that question. But if I expand this little panel on the right, I can see how it built the answer to that question. So it didn't go off and write its own SQL, or as you see with ChatGPT, it spins up a Python editor and writes its own code. It basically writes a program to give you the answer, which it will do differently every time. Here, it's used the metric catalog that's been curated for your organization. So every time you're going to get the right answer. There is no way that's going to get wrong. It might pick the wrong metric, but then you can say, hang on, okay, let me change that, and then let me give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down, and it'll learn from that experience. So you're going to get the right answer. And then I can ask for insights, and it'll tell me about it if I need to know a bit that from the data interpretation side of things. I can also just keep piling on here to say by gender. Okay, I'm just piling on now. But you can see that you can just keep extending the question. So I asked it for a different analysis slice. I asked it to run a forecast. It'll just so it'll basically control the product, right? Just through a chat interface. So we're compressing the complexity of everything. And now here, if I want, I can just pin that to my personal insights library. stick it on a storyboard, share it with a bunch of people. So you can create content very fast, very easily. Okay, let's ask a more interesting question. What are the main drivers of turnover? So in this case, it's not just giving me a metric-based answer, it's run a predictive model. So in the background of one model, there is an entire predictive platform where you can build predictive data science. And so in this example, it's given me all the actual drivers of turnover. And again, there's a link to a storybook where I can learn more. And here, when I jump in, here's some of the things I was talking about before. I can see the model that was run. So we're using a framework called auto machine learning, which will run 200 different models and they'll all fight it out. This comes up with the right answer, but it tells you more about it. So there's interpretation here around how to understand this model. For those that are more statistically oriented, what's the F1 score? What's the amount of precision and recall? Again, if you can't answer these questions for your models, you're in trouble. So for everything we do, it's always explainable. What's a push factor? What's a pull factor for retention? Where's the level of risk spread across the organization? And you can do this for anything, any kind of model, likelihood of being promoted to a leadership position, and kind of anything at all that you're interested in. And in terms of then getting data into the platform, there's a whole capability around data integration, data modeling. You can just grab data from a bunch of those systems that are around here. CultureRank, Smart Recruiters, Qualtrics, SuccessFactors, Workday, and the like. What's great though is we've created this thing called the Universal Connector, where you can grab any API and just build it on the fly. Now, that may not be everyone in this room, but what's cool is that it's in the tool. And what's great is that the IT team in your company can see what's going on in the tool and they're like, great. What's great about all this is that the one model team provides the data engineering expertise for you. So we don't just say, hey, here's a great product, good luck. Our team supports that across time. This is really important in terms of like trying to get you out of the data assembly Excel land and into the insight generation. What are we going to do? What's significant? How do we drive strategy space? That's kind of what we're about. Any spot, but okay. I think I have any time minutes. Okay, I'm going to take 5 minutes. So we walked through some of this ready to go content, the assistant and what it can do. Oh, okay. The KPI tile on the left is a visualization that's coming out in a couple of weeks. We do product releases every 2 weeks, so the innovation speed is massive. So you can have KPIs on a storyboard that have AI interpretation as a part of that page, so you don't even have to use the assistant if you don't want to. At every step, we're trying to basically inject that insight. We're also, importantly, connecting to your enterprise AI. Who's deployed an enterprise AI to all your employees? Copilot, ChatGPT, something like that. Okay, a few nods, right. This quarter, from those places, you can ask questions of one model. So you can be in Word and say, hey, hang on, got an example. Tell me about my headcount or whatever it is. And it will suck the data through, and then you can just drop it into your document, your presentation, or whatever. But it's going through that value chain we talked about before, the trust chain around security, data lineage, data quality, everything else. So, our booth is up the back. I know we're out of time. There's a whole framework for how we pull the data together, make it real, make it actionable, and wrap AI around it. Importantly, we have also invested a lot in our certification framework. We're the only people analytics company that is ISO certified. We have SOC 2 certification. We're on the Australian government panel. We are New Zealand government panel. We're APRA approved. And our team is in Australia and the data is in Australia. So these are all questions that you should be asking. So AWS in Sydney is where we do the data management. Our team in Brisbane and in Sydney and in Melbourne work with customers. We created the AI Readiness Playbook. A lot of the stuff we talked about today is in that. I'll let you scan the QR code, but it's also, again, at our booth if you want to come and check that out. I'll let the phones do their thing. Oh, No pressure. I'm going to press. Okay, we got it. And I'll be happy to connect on LinkedIn. Thanks for your time.